Dude, that's the thing about fucking Rogan, man. Is like he'll have like a UFC fighter on, and then there's a guy talking about ghosts. Like that's you don't get that. You don't get that with every fucking podcast, every show, man. He's talking about ghosts with a guy who's like believes in fucking spirits. And like yesterday, he had like a UFC fighter on it. It's like what? This is what that type of variety just doesn't come around. Just that doesn't just pop out, and like you don't get that on most fucking programs. Dude. Most programs don't really give you the opportunity to hear about ghosts, and then the next day they're talking about, whatever. It's a very interesting fucking phenomenon where it's like there just seems to be like a place for these weird conversations, and then also because Rogan's a bit of an idiot, right? We all know Rogan's a bit of a fucking idiot. That's not to say he's not a good guy. He's a good guy, but his show is something sometimes can't watch his show because maybe his humor isn't for me, but sometimes the jokes aren't landing. Sometimes it's not good. It's just like that just is what it is, man. Like I don't know what to say about that. I'm not trying to fucking be insulting to Rogan or whatever the fuck the operation is that he fucking runs. Just like he's got a good show, but it's not for me sometimes. And it's just like some of the humor is whatever. But then he's talking about the next day he's got a guy on that's talking about ghosts. So it's very interesting, mix of worlds. Let's put it that way. It's the mix of worlds that comes into place. And that's what I like is the variety, the ability to look at one thing and then the next day it's some fucking random. You're talking about ghosts now. So that's what it is, man. It's the alleviation of boundaries. That's what it is. And that's what really the internet age is about, is the alleviation of boundaries. You don't have to be an expert really to discuss something. You can just kind of start talking about it because anybody can, because that's what the game is now. That's what people do. And Rogan is the patient 1A of that. That he comes at topics that are so out of left field, you're left scratching your head. He has Theo Von on one day, and then he had fucking Trump on. Donald Trump was on his show. And then he has a guy that fucking believes in ghosts. And it's like you just don't see that. You don't see it. You don't see that. Like that gives you a perspective, man. Like that much variety is pretty fucking wild. It is legitimately pretty wild. So for people who don't understand Rogan, or like I know a lot of people who think he's like a meathead or some fucking. People think he's like far right. People think he's like some psycho. It's like, yeah, he's a douche. But then he's also got some guy talking about like consciousness and like the edge of existence and the places where reality dissolves into a paradox, and the nature of spirits and like how ghosts like fit into all that. So like for me, like that's like the most, I don't know what is it. It's just like the interesting questions, the unanswerable questions at the edge of science that science doesn't try to address anymore. This is the problem with science, is that science has become self-assured. It believes that it knows, or at least has the right to dictate the answers. Even though it professes that, it will say that it doesn't. If you ask science and its mouthpieces what the role of science is and how that pertains to the culture at large, it'll tell you a different answer than the reality. And so it's just interesting, dude. It's interesting the depth with which life has its place. Not even life, but just that the conceptualization of things that are outside of that particular set of acceptable truths, which is a funny word, acceptable truths, but things that we are allowed to take on face value, as opposed to the generalized questioning of reality. Those two things juxtaposed against each other it's not a trivial distinction. Being able to look at the world for what it is, or or even this, what it is in the sense of what you don't know about it, as opposed to trying to fit it into some preconceived idea. And this is the thing about scientific exploration. I'm trying to tie this all in here. We'll see if I can do it. But science is, that's like I said, science has become self-assured. Does that be, which science, make no mistake, science is a part of the construct of authority and of institution, at least in American life. And so it has its rationale. It's at least being informed in part by that. Right? It's being informed in the fact. It's being informed by the fact that it is a part of the greater power structures that exist, not only politically but socioeconomically. Like it's that is the aspect of it that I think is the most important, is that it sets a tone with culture to the sense of rigidity. And we've seen that over the course of the last 10, 15 years, with the real rise of social media and YouTube, the internet, being able to share videos in this proliferated way, is people are starting to have access to ideas that are outside of those institutions. Now, the institutions have had a grip on everything. Fundamentally, here's the thing: with rationalist thinking, Enlightenment thinking started in the shadows. It started with like Galileo. Those types of the first originators of that type of thought were essentially imprisoned, castigated, cast out of society for their beliefs, because it went against the doctrine of the day, which was religion, which was the Catholic Church, which was the Protestant Church, which was Christianity in Europe, as we're discussing. So that's a very analogous. Ironically, that's analogous to this time, is when we have religion has gone by the wayside, but what has taken its place is the scientific enterprise, which was essentially originally the supplanter of the existing doctrine with which the power structures perpetuated themselves. Because this is what happens: is once you have ideologies, are like a virus, man. They spread through a culture, or a way of thinking, a way of existing. It starts at the ground level. It starts with the people. It starts with a few geniuses at the edge. And I'm not calling Rogan a genius here. Don't fucking get me mistaken. But it starts with a few outlier thinkers, a few visionaries at the edge of. I'm not saying Rogan's a visionary. Rogan's like a right place, right time type of guy, I believe. But a cultural doctrine, or way of thinking, or way of viewing the world that's outside of the current status quo is a disruptor. It comes in and throws things on their head. It throws the knowledge that exists and the assumptions that exist right on their head, and puts you in a place, and puts the world in a place where it has to kind of conceive and grapple with these things in and of themselves. And in that process, you lose the existing power structure loses its grip, and then you're thrown into a period of whatever, a period of something new, a period of something different, a time that has flux. And I think that we saw that over the course of the 19th century going into the 20th century. We were kind of coming out of Enlightenment. I think the product of the Enlightenment, it gave birth to the internet. At the very end of the Enlightenment period, which probably started in the 1600s, it's probably started with the discovery of the New World at the very end of the 15th century, and went all the way to the creation of the internet at the turn of the new millennium. And so what ended up happening over the course of that time, now that I think that time is gone, trying to put the 1990s and the 1650s in the same box is difficult. That's a long time, and that's a long process, but it took that much time for things to change as they did. And the church was largely gone. These things come in progressively compacted periods. And the church was essentially gone by the by the 90s. By the turn of the century, man, things have changed so much. And so, like, what's replaced that now is science. So, like, the Enlightenment finally became, and this is what happens is when these ideologies when the majority way of thought, way of existence exists and can be manipulated, the power structures that be will take that and use it to their own gain. So that's what you've seen happen is now scientific exploration is put at the forefront of our value system. Religion is gone, and it's just Enlightenment, rationalist thinking that has taken its place. So we're left in a situation now where we have to analyze the world through that lens, but now we're being told to do it. It's not like it's a new thing. It's not like it's an exciting new thing that it's been corrupted. It's stale. It has all the trappings of something being sold to you, and you're told to believe something. And science itself has become stale, and in that expression of the institutionalized aspect of it. Like it's become a part of the way that we view the world as truth is known. And now I'm not saying explored truth, I'm saying known truth, like God is real and God is the only highest power. That's the same. That notion has become the same as sciences and the material rationalist, capitalist, whatever. But that way of thinking has replaced that religious certainty. So the scientific certainty that we have now. And again, if you talk to scientists, they will deny in large part this. What I'm saying, they will profess to still be these agents of truth seeking and agents of front of the, and to be vision, they will profess to be visionaries, but really in reality, the perpetuators of the structures that exist, the power structures, the institutional structures that exist, because they are perpetuating them, because they are captured by them. So whether they know it or not, they are now part of that. They are now part of that apparatus. And so we live in a world, at this time, we live in a world where we are beyond, like, science and the scientific exploration is beyond its peak. It is beyond its useful peak. That's not to say that I'm not criticizing the scientific method. That's not what I'm doing. I'm talking about the people that are bringing forth these ideas as the highest good and the highest truth are doing it not for the seeking of truth, not for the seeking of reality, not for trying to excavate out deep unknown aspects of what we are. They're instead doing it to perpetuate the power systems that maybe not knowingly, but that is what it has become, is an agent of that. So now we're left in a time where people are looking, and people can feel that. People can feel how stale it's gotten. People can feel how delegitimized the things they're being told are really, because we can tell when something's legit, man. Like people are not stupid. And so that's where we are. We're in this age that is post-science almost. That's not this. And again, I'm not criticizing science. I'm not saying science is bad. People will mistake that. But again, it's because there's a doctrine that people will cling to this because it has become their grounding principle to reality. They want to hold on to what's true, just like the people who wouldn't let go of their religion in the name of science. Is now we've come up against something new. I don't know what it is, but I know that the fact that Joe Rogan is having a guy, first he has Theo Von, a fucking hilarious but idiot comic. Then he has fucking Donald Trump on the podcast. Then he has a guy that's talking about ghosts. He's talking to a guy that believes in ghosts. And 20 million people are going to watch that. And so it's like, what is happening now? Like, what is this? People are now interested in the unknown. People are interested in the unanswerable questions. Because we're not interested in seeking truth through science anymore. It's been corrupted. So we turn to these other avenues of knowledge, imperfect as they may be, right? I mean, Rogan isn't Newton. This is another product for our time is endlessly clownish. There's something about our time that is just kind of foolish. Like people talk about UFOs and ghosts instead of, differential calculus, which is hilarious. But it's like that's the new version of that. That's what science was to the Enlightenment. Whatever this is now, whatever the like the mystical, the spiritual, the esoteric, the conspiratorial, the the cryptic. Those people are returning to that type of thought because it's at the forefront of exploration. We know everything there is to know. Science knows everything. That's what people believe, and it's not true. I'm not saying it's true. What I'm saying is that's what the culture believes now. It believes that science is all, and everything that there is to know is known. And again, that's not true. But the funny thing about it is most people are too stupid to actually do differential calculus. Am I using that differential equations? Whatever, same shit. But most people don't even know how a computer works. This is the disconnection and this is why I think that the correlation between religion and then modern science actually does work, because it's like the people doing the science, the people doing these advanced technological, magical, almost miracles that are occurring. It's not that your everyday person. There is like a cult-like aspect of it where it's like there's a certain amount of people who know the answer, and the rest of the people are too fucking stupid to even get close. People can't, dude, the average person in America can't even do trigonometry. Forget algebra. I mean, they maybe can do some basic level algebra, but most people in this country are idiots. So when they're faced with trying to understand science, they don't even want to think about it because it makes them feel inferior. Not to say that they couldn't learn it if they wanted to, but we're at a point in our culture where knowledge seeking is. And this is my point. Knowledge seeking is now the Joe Rogan podcast where they talk about ghosts, and it's great. It's great entertainment, man. And I'm not saying that it has the same intellectual weight as the Enlightenment era thinkers had. Of course it doesn't. But that's the corollary. I'm not saying that the New Testament was as impressive as science. There will never be another Isaac Newton. Maybe there's a breakthrough in physics coming. Who knows? But it's like whatever is happening now, we're at the end of a period and going into another one. And I know for a fact that the fact that Joe Rogan talks about aliens and ghosts and realms beyond our conceptualization and mythical creatures and the edges of the weird fuzzy edges of truth, conspiracies, all that shit, that's a product of people moving away from a system, enlightenment, rational thinking that has been captured and corrupted by the power structures in the culture. So people want to talk about Joe Rogan as if that's what I'm speaking to, is that people want to call him a meathead and whatever. Fair enough, he is a fucking meathead. But at the same time, if you're not looking at what he's doing and what that means, not to say that he even has any intent, I don't think he does, but that is what I'm talking about, is that it speaks to something, a hunger in the people for something. We want to seek truth, man. Human beings are curious. When it's no longer really that interesting, but then there's an argument on the other side where the science community will tell you, no, science is interesting. You people are just idiots. But that's the thing. And maybe the people are fucking stupid. I don't know, man. It's an interesting thing. I think there's a claim to truth on both sides of that. people aren't really interested. But I think this is why. I think it's because the status quo has become, like, science has become status quo. It's not cool anymore. I mean, was it ever cool? I don't fucking know. But it was, before we put a man on the moon, that was something new and exciting, man. It's not that people aren't still doing shit like that, but the average person on the planet isn't that interested. And I don't know why. Is it because they're stupid? Maybe a little bit of that. Are their brains rotted? I don't know. But I think at least a part of the fucking answer to that question is the fact that, it's just become that. Science has become told to you. Science is now told to you just in the same way religion was. It's like, this is how it is. There's a select group of people over here that knows the answer. Shut the fuck up, close your mouth, and listen to them when they tell you. Otherwise, you're a fucking bad person, and you should kill you. That's what it was. And we saw that was during COVID. That was during COVID-19, is everyone, you had to just listen to the science, trust the science. We saw science. That's, I mean, it's been said. This isn't a new thought. But that's what it is. That's what I'm talking about, is that people became aware in this tangible way of how far corrupted some of these centers for esoteric knowledge, the National Institute of Health. You would think that the Center for the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, we've learned that all of these entities, all of these structures are simply a mouthpiece for the state and for the institutions that exist. And people don't like that. They do not want that. People do not like that at all. And so I think that is, man, that's kind of one of the main points. That's really the main point that I'm making, is that, whether or not what Joe Rogan is doing is good or bad, it's because of that. And it's the people's fault that, these people would have you believe that Joe Rogan is an idiot or a stupid person, but that's because he threatens their power. And I'm not saying Rogan's a fucking hero, man. I think he's a bit of a meathead. He's a decent comic. He's not really my taste. I don't think his stand-up, I've seen it. It's not for me. But even me, someone who has been traditionally educated, I know how to do differential calculus, but I still want to hear about the ghosts, man. That sounds fun. So I'm tuning in for that. And it's like, you can't stop that. I think that's another problem, is that science doesn't want to touch some of those topics because they won't be able to answer. Like, they won't be able to answer them with the scientific method. Not yet, or at least. So it's interesting, man. It's that nature of trying to balance. I think it's just corruption. Things will, whatever ideology, whatever the people of the land believe, it will eventually be corrupted, and it will eventually be supplanted by something else. And that's just the way it goes. And so right now we're going through this change in the way that people look at the truth and explorations for the truth and what they are interested in. I'm sorry, but it's not fucking Neil deGrasse Tyson anymore. It's Rogan, and it's the aliens. And love it or hate it, that's the world we're in now.